Alrighty, let's dive right into it. So, the type that we're going to cover today is going to be the EII. All right. So, for the EII, we're looking at, for the base function, they have introverted ethics, and their ignoring function is extroverted ethics. So, this is a very intuitive type as well. Four-dimensional NI, three-dimensional NE, two-dimensional SI. So some sensation that they're sort of striving towards, but then they have polar SE, right? So this is a very intuitive type, one of the most intuitive types in the Socion. And as for that introverted ethics and how that manifests, so generally, this is a type that's going to understand people pretty well and probably get along with a lot of people. But in the case of introverted ethics types, you're not going to see them focus as much on, getting along with a bunch of people, I guess you could say, but more so, isolated to their people. So that's something you're going to see with this type. They're not really going to be, really focused on, everybody or the group. They're really just the people they care about, right? But they do have some FE at their disposal, some extroverted ethics. It is in the ignoring function. So generally, what you're going to see is someone who has the capacity to manage those things, but they just don't really necessarily care to. In fact, it often gets in the way of what they're trying to do, right? So why would they try to keep up with the emotional atmosphere or environment when they could stay true to their own feelings about things, right? And so they're not really concerned with keeping up with that. They'd rather stay true to their real feelings. So that's something you're going to see with this type quite a lot. Now, as for how this appears in the EII versus like the ESI, the EII is going to have less of a, with the ESI, you see somebody who really knows the things that they like and dislike. And yes, the EII will be capable of this as well. But it's going to be more focused on a sense of ideals, right? So you're going to see a type who is pretty focused on how they feel about things. And sort of how they feel about things in a more conceptual sense. So a lot less about how they felt about like a particular situation, and more so sort of abstracting out, okay, well, you felt this way towards this thing. How can I relate to that, right? And so you're seeing a much more nuanced exploration of their inner feelings, right? And so they will do this quite a lot. So nearly their whole worldview really is going to be through, how they feel towards things, and it's going to have a lot of nuance. It's not just going to be as simple as this is how I feel towards this, but it's going to be more of an exploration of, well, I feel this way towards this thing, but that person feels this way towards that person, and how do I feel about the way that they feel, and like it can get complicated. Is what I'm trying to say. The way that this happens, though, is it's going to be a lot more ideal focused. The ESI does have a moralistic component as well, but the way that they're doing it, they're often, a lot of times you see that it's just about their preference towards things, that they like their environment a certain way, and so they sort of enforce that on the environment. EII is not like that. They're going to be, I'm going to compare them to the II a little bit, my own type. They're going to, have that sort of introverted nature. They both have really bad SE, right? IEI has bad SE, EII has bad SE. The difference is with an IEI, you're going to see it. You're going to see their attempt to use extrovert sensing. You're going to see it in their values, the way that they talk about the world. They value force. Whereas with EII, it's something that's kind of put off, it's disregarded. And so for this type, they're going to be, similar to the II, have a pretty peaceful or a pretty peaceful slant, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So this isn't someone who's, has their preferences and then is, slapping people around with it, like maybe ESI might, depending on the situation. No, this is someone that's going to be more withdrawn, more to themselves, but probably pretty easy to relate with and get along with. Now, what's interesting about this type is they have demonstrative introverted intuition and creative extroverted intuition. So what does that look like? Well, for one, their values are going to be on exploration. So this is someone who's going to give a lot of chances. They're going to give a lot of, they're going to explore a lot of perspectives. Honestly, in my experience with this type, most of the time when they've talked about approaching their friends about an issue or, things of this nature, they really approach it from a lot of different angles. They think about how their friend feels, they think about how they feel, they think about, what's important to them, what's important to their friend, and I would go in a lot more detail with this, but I don't necessarily care about those things that much myself. But that's what you're going to see. You're going to see someone that's very thoughtful about how they, their own values, I guess you could say, about how, I keep saying how they feel about it, but I don't know if that really does it justice. In some sense, this would be a very interesting type to talk to about values in general, about what's important and what's not important. And, I think that with this type, you would find very interesting conversation, if it's something they're interested in, about, larger ethical concerns or larger ethical, exploration of ideas. Because, in my experience, they're very interested in talking about, different countries and their relationships to each other. And I suppose just taking that exploration of values to the grand stage. It's not just about them, right? Like with the ESI, it's, it's a gamma type. They're quite reductionist. They're focused on their own life, their own personal journey. That's true to an extent with this type, but not really. They're explorative, so they will explore a lot of different perspectives when it comes to values. And in particular, I think it doesn't really just have to do with them. It has to do with other people. It has to do with, the society at large. So I think I've spent a little bit too much time on this. But what's interesting is NI demonstrative and how it interacts here. So, they have a really clear sense of, they have a really good use of NI. They have four-dimensional NI. What I have noticed with the four-dimensional NI types, in particular, the demonstrative NI types, I've noticed that these people tend to be extremely stubborn about how they think things are going to go. And so what that looks like in the EII is, it can look a few different ways. But in my observation, the way it comes out is it's a prediction of whether something's going to be fulfilling, whether they're going to enjoy something, whether something's going to happen a certain way. And so it actually can reduce the chances that they're going to do a lot of things. This is actually probably my critique of the EII from my experiences with them. I find it very difficult to get them to get outside of their comfort zone and try something new. I have actually made a very strong effort on this front, personally, to get an EII friend of mine to go do new things. And it is not easy. I actually poured way more time and attention into it than I should have. But the general attitude is, well, I'm not going to like that. I'm not going to enjoy that. I don't think that's for me. Last time that I tried that, it didn't go well. And I'm like, well, okay, but what about the possibility that it could go better this time? And they're willing to explore those perspectives and possibilities. But I find that demonstrative NI can be quite stubborn, actually, which is really interesting because in my experience, the demonstrative is usually not extremely stubborn. But I guess there's more insight to be had there. So yeah, that's what I find with the EII. But ultimately they do value extroverted intuition, so they will be explorative types, but they'll also probably prevent themselves from trying a lot of things. So that's something you'll see with them. Ultimately, they are working on that mobilizing SI. So you're going to see them. They're sort of a head in the clouds type, right? So they're trying to ground themselves a lot more and sort of get into a natural routine, as well as be able to manage all of the possible conflicts and things like that they may have in between them and other people, or between their friends with each other. That introverted sensation is going to be a strong focus of theirs. So getting more in tune with their environment and getting more in tune with their body and how they feel, and mediating those conflicts that they may have or have awareness of in their environment. That was such a weird way to say that. Anyways, and then that's a big part of it. With I'm going to kind of tie in SE Polar here. They're not going to use much force. They can be very stubborn about what they like, what they dislike, how they feel about things. I have found it's very hard to get them to change their mind. But it also depends. Sometimes they're open to it. This is actually, I'm going to segue here. This leads me to a really great point. If they think that you are trying to change their mind, they probably won't. That's something that I have discovered as well. It's like if you happen to explore an idea or a concept, it's like I think they'll probably be open-minded and explore and blah, blah, blah. I don't know if they'll actually be interested in changing their mind. I think, they may. They probably, I need to give them more of the benefit of the doubt. I only know so many of these people, right? So they probably will be open to changing their mind, but I find that when you try to change their mind, it does not go well. And in fact, that is most of my experience with them. I am a beta type, so betas are generally trying to get those ideologies out there and sort of competing ideologies. And so in my discussions with EIIs, I am often trying to nail home a point or try to get them to change their mind or see things a certain way. And I find that they are incredibly stubborn against that. And so despite that I have, like one-dimensional extroverted sensation, it's not like I'm super forceful in my approach, but honestly, I think that they are more sensitive to that sort of thing. Like any heightened emotions can be disruptive for them. They have, mobilizing SI, it's the one thing they're trying to create or develop. Meanwhile, they have polar SE. So they're not really well equipped to handle that kind of thing. So that's something that you'll see for them. And then let's see. So another thing, this kind of goes back to the point I made with ESI, right? TE suggestive. This is a very subjective type, right? And even in the sense that, this is a type this isn't the ESI, this is an EII, right? So sure, they can explore different ideas and perspectives and things of that nature, but they're still stubborn. They're still stubborn about how they feel. And so, and maybe my interactions have made me think they're a little bit more stubborn than they are. That's possible. But generally, just because they're a subjective type and because they have their sense of their own ideals and how the world should be and how people should be and that sort of thing, they're going to need that objectivity that comes with extroverted logic. And with the LSC in particular, their dual, they have the creative SI as well. So that really, that's going to add a lot of value for them as well, because finding ways to mediate those conflicts or mediate the disagreements, or even just, I think oftentimes EIIs can get wrapped up in if they have a practical problem they need solved. I think that the EIIs can often get wrapped up in the relational aspects of it, rather than just seeing it as a objective problem that they need to address. I think they'll often humanize it or idealize it in the sense that it becomes an almost concern that they're going to have to mediate an issue that may not exist, right? It might be as simple as just delivering feedback to somebody at work, or or communicating how a process broke down. It's like these kinds of things might present a moment for an EII where they think it's going to be a relational issue. And so that LSC that's really grounded and really pragmatic and practical can really provide useful solutions to them. Look, all you have to do is this, right? Lay it out so clearly with no subjectivity involved, with no relational concerns involved, these sort of things. That's not going to be their focus. And so as a result, it's going to be like a breath of fresh air. It is this simple. You can just say this, you can deliver this feedback in this way. And, sort of give them a guideline or a tool or an approach. This is what you need to say. This is what you need to do. And it'll be objective. And it's not going to be about how they feel. It's not going to be about how the other person feels. It's going to be very clear cut. And that's going to be something that the EII is going to want to receive, right? And with the ESI, for them, it was more so about getting past their own self and their own preferences. And that can also be true for EII, but I think in the EII's case, it's more about addressing all of the concerns they think they'll have with other people, or even with themselves, potentially, about how they feel about themselves and something they might have to do practically. I could see, there's a simple thing they need to do that could make their life better, and maybe they over idealize it. Maybe they make it so much about their own values and whether it's right or wrong for them that they don't see the simplicity of just addressing the issue itself, right? So I think that sort of grounded, clear-cut, objective type is of the LSE is gonna provide a lot of utility for the EII. I think that's going to be a big part of what they offer. And as well as I've noticed with LSEs in particular, they have demonstrative SE. I've noticed LSEs have a way of delivering force that does, in a way that does not feel forceful, right? It's firm, but it's not, it doesn't feel like they're coming off too strong, right? It's just enough to carry the point of what someone might need to do. I'm thinking of people at work. I'm thinking of people, LSCs I've seen in the workplace, but just having that ability to say something in just the right way, where it's clear, it's not up for interpretation, and it's got a sense of solidarity behind it. And what I mean by that is like a level of force, but not really forceful enough to feel like force. That's what I think the LSC has a keen ability with, and I think that's something that can be useful for the EII as well. How much force is needed in a situation? That's not something that the EII is going to be very aware of, and so that can be useful, and especially in giving it to them in a way that they can receive it, which is through SI. The LSC maybe has a lot of utilization of force in the way that they use their introverted sensation, but generally, the EII is not going to want to use force really. So I imagine this conversation going where they're asking the LSC for advice on a given problem they need to address, and the LSC says, oh, you can say this or that. EII might have concerns. Well, what if they think what if they think I'm being too hard on them, or what if they think this, and I can see that they'd be like, well, you're not, you're just doing this. You're just, returning them back to the pragmatic point. This is what you have to do. This is your job, right? Simplifying things for them. And it's actually kind of funny hearing me try to explain how they keep things simple, because I'm talking in a general sense. I'm not pulling out examples, but this is just part of being IEI, right? Like LSC is a very different type for me. It's kind of hard for me to talk in their terms, but I have seen their behavior. So I've seen what this looks like. So yeah, I think that's something that the EII is going to get as well from the LSC. So that's my experience of the EIIs. They're very thoughtful creatures. I think they can there's a lot of potential there. In fact, I would encourage you, if you have seen an EII around, to talk to them about ethics. Talk to them about their opinions on the global landscape and politics. And I think I've had some of the best conversations about politics and about how I personally feel about things, and with EIIs, because they are very interested in exploring those things. And so and I think that they've thought quite a lot about it. Now, I would not go in with the mission of changing their minds. I don't think you're going to make any headway. And if you do, good luck. Or if you do, you should let me know how you did it. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say. So hope you enjoyed this video. Down in the description below, we have a Discord channel that you can join. Leave me a like, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. You can check out our website. And actually, I have some very exciting things that I am very excited to show you guys pretty soon. There's some cool things around the corner, so definitely stay tuned. And if you know an EII or someone who might want to watch this video, send it to them. Leave me a comment down below. So thank you guys for the support. See you guys next time.